Hey, what is up, spiritual hooligan? It's time for you to give up guilt. It's not working for you. It's not raising your consciousness. It's not causing happiness and peace. Guilt, in the end, is a feeble attempt to buy salvation. I just want you to know I'm going to read you a quote from one of my favorite authors, Dr. David Hawkins, today, and it's from my favorite book, Eye the Eye. My name is Matthew Ferry, and I am bringing you your daily enlightenment. It's your moment to pause, to slow down, to get connected to enlightened perspectives. I want to help you to quiet your mind and restore your peace. Now, one of the guys that really helped me to do that was my mentor, David Hawkins. Very, very beneficial to go through his processes of learning how to muscle test and use that to distinguish levels of consciousness and then ultimately become an investigation tool. Now, for me, you'll notice in my methodology, I had to spin off from just focusing on levels of consciousness with Dr. Hawkins, but that doesn't mean that I don't massively honor and appreciate how valuable and important that is. The work that he put forth just blew my mind. So today I want to talk about guilt, and this is in his book, Eye the Eye. And it's in the chapter Advanced Awareness, and the chapter head is called Give Up Guilt. And I want you to give up guilt today. You ready? Let's do this. So he says, guilt is an attempt to purchase salvation, to manipulate God, and to purchase forgiveness by suffering. Now listen to that. It's an attempt to purchase salvation, manipulate God, and purchase salvation, or purchase forgiveness by suffering. In other words, it's built into us to suffer, turn ourselves into a victim, to then gain goodwill. And in the meantime, we're trying to gain goodwill from God, from the people around us. We're trying to get forgiveness. This is, like the deeply spiritual version, right? Is salvation, manipulate God, purchase forgiveness. That's on the deeply spiritual side, but we're doing it all over the place. We're trying to use our suffering as a way of manipulating the people around us. These attitudes stem from the misinterpretation of God as a great punisher. We think we will assuage, I don't know how to say that word, his righteous wrath by our pain, suffering, and penance. There is actually only one appropriate penance for wrongdoing, and that is change. Instead of condemning the negative, we choose the positive. So important. Instead of turning back on ourselves and going into a victimized state. So guilt is an expression of victim. Guilt is also an expression of self-hatred. And instead of turning the negative energy or destructive energy in on ourselves and destroying ourselves, hoping that destroying ourselves will win favor in some way from our community, from the people in our life, we'll manipulate them somehow into paying attention to us, manipulate God. Instead of doing that, we just change our behavior. So he says, to make progress and to change takes more effort than feeling guilty. But it is a more appropriate response. We note from the scale of consciousness, so if you haven't looked at the scale of consciousness lately, you can Google it, put in Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness, and then track down the word guilt, and you're going to see that guilt is way down at the bottom. And here's what you need to know if you aren't up to speed on Dr. Hawkins' work. He discerned over this incredible period of time where he was investigating consciousness that anything that calibrated below 200 on the scale was weakening to you and in a survival state, and anything above 200 was strengthening to you and progressively brought you into enlightened states or closer to God. So he says if you look on the scale of consciousness, guilt is way down at the bottom, whereas God is way up at the top. Consequently, wallowing around in guilt at the bottom of the field of consciousness does not get us to the top. You aren't going to use the survival state of guilt to achieve the peace that you want. He says humility means that we see our own life as the evolution of spiritual consciousness. We learn from mistakes. maybe most useful of all quotes, to revise whatever the past behavior is. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And I think that it's so valuable for us to just admit it seemed like a good idea at the time. And you'll find that all of the things that you've done where you feel guilty, you feel bad, you feel ashamed, if you look back in that moment, there was no other option. You were operating out of some program. You were operating through some delusion, some filter. You were operating in the hallucination that you were in a survival state. There was no option. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Later, of course, in retrospect, it becomes recontextualized and seems to be in error. And you see, this is where I got the word from my mentor, recontextualize. However, if other people are intrinsically innocent because of the nature of consciousness, then so is the self of the spiritual seeker. In other words, what he's saying is, one of the things that we're working towards as a spiritual being, a spiritual hooligan in this particular case, is we're working towards recognizing everybody's doing the best they can. And people are innately innocent. They're operating out of survival programs at level of consciousness. They're being influenced by all of these things that were previously in their energy as they came in from their soul. And now they're being shaped by their existence, but what is being shaped was, in essence, what was already there, what they already were. So you can't convince the black widow spider to be anything other than it is. So he's saying that because everyone else is innocent because of the nature of consciousness, well, then so are you. He says, along with giving up guilt, it is also very helpful to give up sin as a reality. Error is correctable. Sin is a mistake and is forgivable. Most of what people call sin is actually just an attachment, an emotionality stemming from the child within. Now, you got to remember that Doc Hawk was a psychotherapist for the majority of his life, so he uses a lot of psychotherapy type of terms. And he says, it is actually the child who lies, steals, cheats, calls other people's names, and hits other people. Therefore, sin is really immaturity and ignorance, and of the true nature of reality, ignorance of the true nature of reality, and the nature of consciousness itself. So he's saying that really what we call sin, or what we would religiously make ourselves wrong for, is just the child, the unevolved part of you coming through. And that part of you really doesn't have any understanding of the nature of reality or the nature of consciousness, and therefore the ignorance itself puts it into a survival state. And this is what I've been trying to work with you on in the Daily Enlightenment. You go into a survival state, and you don't even notice. And that's the ignorance that we're talking about. It's just these habits, these patterns that flick you into an irrational state where you're in a state of survival. He says, as spiritual values replace worldly ones, temptation diminishes and error is less likely to occur. Damn, Doc Hawk, Eye of the Eye. Love this book. Really, really. I'm so stoked. I get so excited to read you his stuff, and I hope you go out and get this book and read it for yourself. What did this make you think? What were the insights that you had? I want to hear from you. I would love for you to leave me a comment. And you've watched this video or listened to this all the way through, like this, please. That tells these big platforms this is an idea worth spreading. Will you also subscribe to my channel and share this with people who are in your life that you think that could benefit from it? That would be awesome if you would do that. My name is Matthew Ferry, and I'm the author of Quiet Mind, Epic Life. And you can consider me a mentee standing on the shoulders of Dr. Hawkins, doing my work to move and forward consciousness. You can join us if you like over in the Spiritual Hooligans Facebook group. We'd love to see you there. We're having a great conversation without you. Come over there and join us. And lastly, thank you. Thank you for tuning into this Daily Enlightenment.